per our school committee policy BDA, which is our annual school committee organizational meeting, as I just did, I will open the meeting to start first and foremost with one of our most important pieces of business, and that being the election of a new chair. And once the new chair is in place, he or she will preside over the meeting. So at this time, I will take a nomination and a second for a new chair.
I nominate Carrie Lawrence for chair.
So, okay, so I have a nomination for Carrie Lawrence and seconded. Do we have any discussion on that? Okay, we need a roll call vote on this. So roll call vote, please.
Eric Brown, aye.
Vicky Levinson, aye.
Carrie Lawrence, I think.
Bill Desutter, aye.
Sean Nicholson, aye.
Dorothy Skelly, aye.
Okay, we have a new chair. Congratulations, Madam Chair.
So official. Thank you, sir. Okay, so then our next order of business will be to accept nominations for the position of vice chair.
I nominate Bill Desutter as vice chair.
Second.
Oh, go ahead.
Second.
You second.
Okay, second.
And a roll call vote.
Eric Brown, aye.
Vicky Levinson, aye.
Carrie Lawrence, aye.
Bill Desutter, aye.
Sean Nicholson, aye.
Dorothy Skelly, aye.
And motion passes. Congratulations, Bill.
Thank you.
Great. And next order of business would be to accept nominations for position of secretary. You do it soon.
I nominate Eric Brown.
Talk to the clock.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay. And roll call vote.
Eric Brown, aye.
Vicky Levinson, aye.
Carrie Lawrence, aye.
Bill Desutter, aye.
Order Nicholson, aye.
Dorothy Skelly, aye.
Okay. And nomination passes. Congratulations, Eric.
Thank you.
Next order of business would be to take a motion for Taft Library trustee, which for the past has been Lee. Lee Martin, and this needs to be somebody from our Mendon committee.
Who wants to take it?
I know, Sean, you're seeming kind of jobless right now.
There's plenty of jobs coming. I'll take it. I don't mind.
You like books. You like right? There's plenty of them in the library.
That's fine.
Okay.
Somebody pull the trigger.
I nominate Sean Nicholson as top library trustee.
I'll second.
And roll call vote.
Eric Brown, aye.
Vicky Levinson, aye.
Carrie Lawrence, aye.
Bill Desutter, aye.
Sean Nicholson, aye.
Dorothy Skelly, aye.
And motion passes. Congratulations, Sean.
Just as a point of order,
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
for the rest of these positions, you do not need to do a roll call. It's only by policy for chair and vice chair.
Okay, but it's so much more fun. Okay, so the next order of business is to take a motion for the Racine Fund representative.
I make a motion to nominate Bill Desutter as Racine Fund representative.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Congratulations, Bill. And next on the list would be to take a motion for the position of assistant treasurer.
I make a motion to nominate Sean Nicholson as assistant treasurer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the motion passes. The next order of business would be to take a motion for treasurer.
I make a motion to nominate Joe Leahy as treasurer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Next on the list would be to take a motion for clerk to the school committee.
I make a motion to nominate Kelly McKellar as the clerk of the school committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Welcome back, Kelly. you. Next order of business would be to take a motion for the Blackstone Valley Educational Consortium representative.
I make a motion to nominate Dr. Ruszczyk as Blackstone Valley Educational Consortium representative.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And motion passes. And then,
Okay, if I could just interrupt, we're just a
Sure.
little out of sequence in the agenda. So that we jumped a little bit ahead with all those officer rules,
okay,
but you technically need to approve the
The agenda,
agenda.
okay.
in minutes, okay?
All right.
That's right, yeah.
okay, so we need to take a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
I'd like to just amend it, very simple amendment that we approve the May 5th executive session minutes as well in the agenda.
Okay. Isn't that in the next order of business? The executive session minutes
So
from?
for
For
the
the
agenda.
just want to put
Oh,
it in
okay.
the agenda.
Okay.
It's May 3rd, though, right?
May 3rd,
Yes,
because
sorry.
it's two sets, because if you recall, at our last regular meeting on May 17th, we didn't have those executive session minutes.
Okay, so then I need to take a roll call vote to approve the amendment to the agenda.
That's right.
Right? Okay.
So
It's not roll
moved.
call.
So,
moved.
yeah, I like that. So
So
moved.
moved.
And second is,
All right. So that motion passes and the amended agenda is approved. Did I do that right?
I don't think you
There
should
you
go.
go. All those, now you say all those in favor.
All those in
I'm quitting. Not letting you do that to me on the first night. Yeah.
Okay, there's no one that seconded Dorothy's approval of the agenda. He just went in to make the amendments.
that's
Okay,
right. So
that-
we
I think
approve
that's
the
where I got
amendment
it
first.
And then
And then
approve
amend
the
it.
agenda.
So who did the second to the
Second.
agenda before you
Seconded.
made the amendment?
I don't think anybody seconded
Right.
No.
Dorothy's
Okay, because-
motion.
Okay, so we had a second for Dorothy's motion. So now we had the discussion, which
Okay.
is
Okay,
the amendment,
the amendment.
and then that was moved and seconded,
Okay,
so now we need to vote
okay. So we need a vote
on the amendment.
on the amendment
You can-
to the agenda for this evening.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
And motion passes. All right, thank you for your help. All right, then next we have a motion to approve the open session minutes from May 17th, 2021 and May 24th, 2021.
I make a motion to approve the open session minutes, May 17, 2021, and May 24th, 2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And we need a motion for the approval of the executive session minutes from May 17th, 2021.
Make a motion to approve the executive session minutes as amended to include May 3rd,
Yes.
2021, and May 17th, 2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, motion passes. Okay, now we need to get back to the subcommittees. All right. We're back on track now. Okay, so the school committee members were all in favor of the following appointments for the following subcommittees. First, the budget subcommittee would be Phil DeSutter, Sean Nicholson, and Eric Brown. Policy subcommittee would be Dorothy Scally, Vicki Ludwigson, and Eric Brown. Negotiation subcommittee, Phil DeSutter, Carrie Lawrence, Vicki Ludwigson. Superintendent's evaluation subcommittee, Carrie Lawrence, Dorothy Scally, Sean Nicholson. And the Golden Apple subcommittee, everyone volunteered. And then a motion to approve the subcommittee selections. Is that what I do at this point? Okay.
Motion to approve the subcommittee selections as stated by Carrie.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes and our school committee is officially reorganized. Next up on the agenda would be superintendent's comments.
All right, well, good evening, everybody. Just a couple quick items that are definitely relevant. I included in your packet the updated COVID guidance from DESE. With seemingly fairly rapid improvement and the elimination of the grand majority of restrictions as of May 29th. DESE did update its guidance as of May 27th. Some of the key things, as you know, and I think we discussed this at the last meeting, students in any type of outdoor activity do not need to mask. The masking is continuing till the remainder of the school year. I do think it is kind of significant, and I have gotten questions about masking for the fall, what's going to end up happening with that. DESE has not given us any guidance whatsoever on that piece. I do think it's kind of interesting, and this kind of dovetails with the next issue that I'd like to discuss, that they're continuing that guidance for summer school programming that we have through the end of the school year. So masking. Basically, they're saying, look, we're not going to issue separate guidance for summer school programming, and we're anticipating not only Mendon-Upton, but across the state, that summer school programming will be larger and broader than we've seen in recent years. So again, I think something that is not too shaking, but the expectation for the fall is that all districts, all schools will be back to normal as far as full in-person 5 days a week for all students, and that districts should not be offering something like the standalone remote option program for students. So they've been very, very clear about that. So again, I have received a couple emails from parents with concerns about masking, and particularly, coupling it with today and tomorrow with this really, really warm weather. We're very cognizant that it's a challenge. I guess my advice would be hang tough. It's only, 7.5 more days now. We will get through this, but it remains to be seen, good Lord willing, that the progression of the virus continues in the same direction, and there's additional opportunities for vaccinations. I think there's a very, very strong chance that there will not be masking in the fall. Okay. The second piece is the Summer Learning Academy. Again, I want to give hats off to Maureen for her outstanding work in kind of leading this and taking the grant funding that we've received for DESE and putting together a very coherent program for our district. So we're targeting 3 weeks in August from the 9th to the 27th, where we will have sessions from 8 to 10 and 10 to 12 daily, Monday through Thursday. And I put in the background notes, the approach will be to use multiple measures of how our kids are doing to make determinations if they would be a strong candidate for summer school programming. Okay, so not only academic things, I know a few meetings ago, she presented the iReady and also the Panorama survey data. So we're kind of looking at where kids are, not only academically, but are they at risk socially, emotionally, or behaviorally. So things like grades, things like teacher input, things like the benchmark data from iReady and Panorama will be used to make recommendations for students to enroll. Obviously, this will be completely free of charge for students. Teachers and principals will be in contact very shortly with families. We're looking for a target of about 20 students, give or take, per grade level in grades 1 through 12, or actually 1 through 11, right?
Yep.
So it's going to be something that's more significant in programming as far as summer school than we've had in years past. But we're very much looking forward to it. I don't know, do you have anything else to add to that, Mo?
No, I think just on the timeline, some of our iReady end of year assessments were pushed back just with MCAS a little bit later than we would have originally liked. So the letters, we're not going to send out letters to the students until after we receive that data. So they're finishing up this week and into, I think at the end of this week in all the schools. So there will be, the team will be meeting, that's the final criteria we're waiting for on our list.
Okay, then we're moving on to subcommittee updates. So we need an update from the policy subcommittee.
That normally would be given by.
Lee,
Right.
where is our policy one?
I think I have the notes. I think we should table it till next. Is it? No.
Well, this is intended as a second reading.
It's the second reading. I can give a summary of these. You're
Yeah, I don't
comfortable
know
with
if
that?
they were done. Yeah.
Okay. You should have in your packet, and I think we had a first reading. They are kind of updated policies, very much from MASC. One is policy JFBAD on homeless students and enrollment rights and services. The second one, policy JFABF, is about educational opportunities for children in foster care, and then JFABE is about educational opportunities for military children. All of these are really the JVABF and JVABE are really brand new policies. The homeless student policy is an update from what we used to have in place. Really, this is kind of looking at what state law and state regulations are as far as what a district must legally provide for opportunities for these students who are at a disadvantage. As I say in the background notes, as we, obviously these policies are important to have in place, but also in lieu of next school year, we have a compliance review from DESE coming in, and they're really looking specifically, what are your policies and practices with regard to underserved populations. So it is important to have, this in place and approved.
Can I ask a question? Do we feel that this will impact our budget in any way? I mean, I know these are legally required. I know these are regulations. I understand all that. I'm just asking the question of, do we have to make special consideration?
I would generally say no, because those populations in Mendon-Upton are not very large. We have had some students that have had the homeless label because they're sheltering with a relative or with a family friend and so on from time to time, and there's been some financial considerations. We've also gotten a small amount of state funding, a special line, related to homeless transportation.
Yep.
But it's kind of few and far between, and it's not a big driver to our budget.
I'd like to make a motion to accept all these policies into our policy, school policy.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes for approval of all three of the new policies in our policy subcommittee. Moving on to the next agenda item would be new business.
Okay, so we've had a lot going on, needless to say, in the district. We had, I believe it was, just 3 weeks ago, we had the override vote fail. And then the following week, you as a committee recertified the budget at the same amount of the original certification amount from March 15th. And as I reported to you, unfortunately, with state law, of a notification date of June 1st, any type of staffing cuts need to be made before June 1st. So unfortunately, I have to report the cuts that have been made to make up that 2.1 million. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that to put in very, very clear terms what it means. So I will be sharing this out first time publicly with all of you, and then I intend on corresponding with our parents as well to kind of let them know what the state of affairs is. So as we said before, back on the Mendon town election on May 18th, the ballot override, yes.
Would you mind sharing this?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's right.
I completely forgot.
Excellent.
That should be showing up now, correct?
That is perfect.
Yeah. Thanks, Sam. So as I said before, that at the Mendon town election, the Prop 2.5 override of a little more than 803,000 failed. So technically, right now, we do not have an operational budget that has been approved by both communities because we do have that split decision between Upton and Mendon. But as we've said many times before, with that loss of 803,000, the actual loss is a little more than $2.1 million because you have to take Upton's proportional share to that, which is between 1.3 and 1.4 million, must be taken into account. And as I said during our last meeting, Upton's proportional share has already been approved, and it was approved at its annual town meeting back on May 8th. So we're in a situation now where we've got to account for how can that 2.1 million of revenue be realized. So as we talked about before, the first thing obviously would be to cut any and all new and restored positions. So that comes out to be that 7.0 FTEs comes out to be $450,000. So then you start to look at what is in the line item of the budget, and I think we discussed some of these pieces during the last meeting, but you really look to reduce out our textbooks. So we had a pretty robust request here, particularly at the high school, for math textbooks, particularly for some of our AP courses and geometry courses. Some early literacy series at the elementary, those have been eliminated. I think as we reported out at the last meeting, we found out that we would have 2 fewer students going to Norfolk Aggie than budgeted. At budgeting roughly 25,000 per student, that represents the savings of 50,000. We had included about 35,000. The split was about 30,000 for Nipmuc and 5,000 for MISCO in additional athletics investment, particularly looking at the lost gate receipts this year because of the pandemic. We also have planned on increasing user fees to kind of make our sports program a little bit more self-funding, so to speak. So that represents about 60,000. Something that we really is troubling, but we've been affiliated for, I want to say, just about the last 10 years with the Mass Insight Association, which does a lot of work with our teachers and with our students in preparing them for AP exams. That annual subscription is about $17,000. An additional $6,000 John and Marianne had provided for an additional $6,000 for part of the Mastery Transcript Consortium. I know when they talk about Portrait of a Scholar, they speak passionately about kind of rethinking the traditional transcript to kind of have a more holistic approach around what are a students' strengths and passions. We've eliminated many of our professional development lines, particularly around anything to do with dues, conferences, fees, workshops, and so on. That is almost $66,000. And then elimination of department chair leadership, both here and at Musco Hill Middle School. That represents about another $75,000. So when you sum total that, it comes out to be $367,000. So between the two of them, you're talking about $800,000 of the 2.1 million. So you still have about 1.3 million to get to. So the really difficult piece, as always, is looking at cutting positions. And the really challenging part of this is you are making impossible decisions. You kind of, the guiding philosophy is around preserving your academic core, thinking about things like class sizes, thinking about your classroom teachers. And to be very clear, to be very explicit, electives are extremely important. Ensuring that our kids, particularly at the early level, have the supports that they need are also extremely important. But then the other side as well is in eliminating certain positions. Sometimes you're looking at some folks who do not have a lot of seniority. So where they are in the pay scale tends to be on the lower side. And then you also have to take into account maximum exposure with regard to Social Security, which is unemployment insurance, which is 35%. So you could take somebody's given salary, cut that position, but you're really only cutting about 65% of that salary. So it's, the whole thing is just extremely challenging. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about the positions that have been eliminated either through pink slips, through attrition, in some cases, a person retiring or a person leaving the district, and in some cases through a process known as bumping, where somebody's laid off, but then somebody bumps into a new position, and it could be them going from one school to another. So at this point in time, in total, we have eliminated a little over 28 positions across the district. And looking at them, you can see here at Clough Elementary School, you're talking a reading specialist, a special education teacher, a fourth grade teacher, nursing assistant, kindergarten Spanish immersion teacher, Spanish immersion aide, and a paraprofessional, a roughly half-time paraprofessional. So as you can see, that equates to 5.82 FTEs. At Memorial Elementary School, it's a little bit more. It is a reading specialist, a special education teacher, a technology teacher position, a kindergarten teacher position, an academic tutor, paraprofessional, and 2 ABA techs who work in a specialized program. Musco Hill Middle School, it's a little under 8 FTEs. It is a 8th grade science teacher, 2 special education teachers, a 5th grade teacher, 1.5 music and band teachers, 1.4 world language teacher, and 1 speech language pathologist. And then at Nipmuc Regional High School, it is 2 social studies teachers, 1 English teacher, 1 career and innovation coordinator, half of a choral teacher, and 1.0 FTE admin assistant. And then as far as a district-wide position, a network support technician. So as I said before, those total reductions represent 28.22 FTEs across the district. So it's something to see these positions right now to make up that 2.1 million, what's been cut. The question is, what does this mean programmatically? And I think I shared this with you. One, we have as a goal every year to have 2 strands of Spanish immersion. With this, we would reduce it down to 1 so that there would be no kindergarten Spanish immersion at Clough Elementary School. You probably noticed the theme around, reduction of reading specialists, reduction of some special educators. So some of those supports that we have in place will be reduced, and as a result, we'll still meet students' IEPs. However, it'll be markedly much more stress and strain on the caseloads of our special educators and our related support providers. In some grades at the elementary, and particularly we're looking at grades 3 and 4, you would be talking about larger class sizes. We've projected them to be 27 to 31. And then reduction of electives, particularly technology. You probably saw the reduction of the technology position at Memorial Elementary School. You would probably look at, right now, all of our kids have technology. We'd probably go back to the future of where we were 6-7 years ago, where only upper elementary students would have technology as an elective. At Misco Hill Middle School, right now, and it's been this way for a while, we generally have class sizes in the 22-23 range for grades 5 and 6, and then it's 24-25 in grade 7. Pretty much by eliminating a position across the grade levels, now your grade 5, because it's down 1 section, kind of goes more into that 27 range, and then your grades 7 and 8 are more pushing that 30 range. You probably noticed at Misco Hill Middle School, some real dramatic reduction of electives, particularly in music, and then also in world language. I believe between music and world language, you're down 3 FTEs or 3 teaching positions in that area. And then reduction of services for students with significant social emotional needs. So Misco had started over the last couple of years and started right before the pandemic, a bridge program, a program to work with students that may have some interruptions in their regular instruction because they're receiving services from some outside provider, and it might be kind of a partial program or something. We're looking at reduction of staffing for that program, which is obviously a significant concern for some of our students with the most significant needs. Here at the high school, in reducing, content area teachers, and specifically reducing social studies and reducing English as well, I think in all of your core academic areas, you'll definitely see class sizes over 30, without a doubt. Again, reduction of elective opportunities for students. When you're taking a look at reducing the electives at the middle school, You try to plug the gap through the bumping process of utilizing some staff from the high school to split their time between the high school and the middle school. And as a result, you're also going to reduce some of the elective opportunities here at NIPMA because you're now spreading that staff between the two buildings. As I talked about, without us not being part of the Mass Insight program, there's clearly less support and resources for the AP program. I talked about cuts to instructional leadership, specifically in the role of our department chairs. Probably if there is any school that really needs that leadership at the department level, it's here at NIPMA. You can make that case for any high school because your high school is really your flagship school district. It's the most complex school of the districts. And the reality in having our athletics program be much more self-funded rather than district funded, you're talking about user fees going up to approximately $400 to $450 for all sports. And it would be, as it typically is, even more for your more expensive sports like football and hockey. So we talked about, I believe, all of this before, but I'd like to say a little bit more about a key concern around NIPMUC's accreditation status. As you all know, NIPMUC is accredited through the major accreditation agency of our state, NEAS, which is the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. They accredit, over 95% of high schools across New England, and as far as colleges and universities. And for those of you who are on the committee, we were in a difficult situation in the spring of 2019, and one of the cuts that was made was the library media specialist position. And in doing that, standard number 4 of the 7 standards is community support. And it talks about having positions of key import in a high school setting like a library media specialist position. It's actually one of the indicators of the standard. So as a member school, if there is a cut that has a deleterious effect on programming, the school is required to file something called the substantive change report. So John and Marianne did file that report in the fall of 2019, and I think at least on a couple of occasions, we've kind of reported back what NEAS response has been in this process. And it's pretty much been from year to year, what are you doing to bridge that gap? And realize over the last 2 academic years, they've kind of had a Band-Aid approach where we've had a paraeducator kind of filling the gap as a library aide. But NEAS has been very, very clear, expecting a restoration of that position. So with this failure right now, there is an expectation that an additional substantive change report should be filed by the end of this month. And we're fully anticipating, because this process now has dragged on for over 2 years, some type of adverse action against NIPMUC's accreditation status. So as far as accreditation status, think about it as a hierarchy. The highest you can be is fully accredited, which NIPMUC is. Below that would be warning status, which means you've got a persistent problem with one of the indicators of the standard. And then would be probation, like this is real problematic, and then termination of your accreditation. I've had experience, as has John, with the New England Association for over 20 years, going back to my days as a high school teacher and a high school principal. I've served on the Commission for Public Secondary Schools, just like John has. I am fully anticipating, probably at a minimum, we will learn in the fall that NIMUC has been placed on warning due to this. Probably doesn't merit probation status, but I cannot guarantee that. I think NIPMUC, and through this process, and particularly where we've been over the last, obviously 16 months through the pandemic, NEASC has been very patient with its membership schools. But I think the reality of NIPMUC's current situation is very, very challenging, and realize this started well before the pandemic started. And I think the irony, and again, the accreditation cycle works in 10-year units, and NEASC had its full accreditation visit in 2013. They're slated to come back again in 2023, and 2 years, give or take. Realize NIPMUC is held up as a model school from the New England Association. If you were to Google right now NIPMUC and NEASC, you would see that numerous times NIPMUC has been held up in NEASC showcase of schools for the innovative practices, the innovative structures that are happening in the school. So I think it's really, really unfortunate that we have a situation right now that, because of this funding and lack of community support vis-a-vis the failed override, there will be deleterious effects in all likelihood to NIPMUC's accreditation status. So as we said before, and I think you've unfortunately seen this slide before, with the failure of this override and unfortunately the $2.1 million in cuts that we've had to sustain, we're now kind of in a downward spiral. That if we have to sustain these cuts that I just detailed to you, we're looking at a regression in programs, services, and so on that we provide to students that have made our district so successful. So that's the status quo. You obviously know what has happened in the interim, what the Mendon Board of Selectmen has done with regard to the second vote, which will be held in Mendon on Tuesday, June 29th. But that's the status quo. We could be in a situation where we have success on June 29th. First and foremost, I would, on June 30th, recall each and every single person that has received a layoff notice. But right now, we have to go on the assumption that we sustain these cuts, which are extremely difficult. So that's a quick summary. I'd be more than happy if any committee member has a question to answer your question.
So you identified that we cut from 2 current strands of kindergarten and SI to 1.
Correct.
How will we determine who actually?
I think we'll have to go back to the future and do a lottery. Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay.
And it really is unfortunate for a simple reason that the numbers are there and the numbers are healthy.
Yep.
So you mentioned reducing social studies teachers, I believe in the middle school. I forgot where that was.
High school.
High school.
High school. Okay. Interesting. Okay. So I guess I'm trying to kind of assess what this means as far as the AP programs are concerned. Reduction in the AP supports and the types of facilities that the students use to learn the AP classwork, I expect. But is there any reduction in the number of APs? Is that what you're anticipating? Or is it, we're going to try to preserve those?
I think we will do our best to preserve them. I think you'll see situations, particularly, the social studies department does a great job, and part of the great job that they do is there's a lot of really interesting social study elective classes that are offered to, particularly upperclassmen. I think, again, when you have to make these difficult decisions, you kind of go with your academic core. So think about, what do kids really need to take? They need to take US 1, US 2, WEX 2, and so on. So it'll be more of those core offerings rather than the elective offerings.
And DESE, is there any impact on those programs?
I'm sorry?
Not DESE, geez. Business.
DECA.
DECA.
Any?
So I think what will end up happening is, and again, John and Mary Ann could do a much better job answering this than I could. You've got to, with the schedule, you've got to put students somewhere. So yeah, they're realize you only have 2 business positions. They're teaching business, but they're also teaching a little bit of technology. So I'd anticipate some of those elective offerings, those class sizes dramatically increasing.
And you mentioned the choral teacher being.
Yeah, we probably will be looking at right now through the bumping process of splitting the time between the middle school and high school.
Yeah,
And what happens if, let's say they came back and we were warning or probation? What's the impact on kids who are applying for college?
So
How does that impact their
it's not a good thing. I think what happens, and I wish I had one of the NIPMA guidance staff here. They could speak to it with a lot more authority than I do. The net effect of it is that college admissions counselors very much have a beat on high schools and what's happening in high schools, and what's the reputation of the school and so on. To be very honest and to be very candid, I wouldn't go as far as to say, oh my God, there's a negative effect on our accreditation. Kids aren't going to get into colleges anymore. I wouldn't say that, but it definitely is not helpful to the process, because it's a statement on when you have a negative action taken against your accreditation. First of all, it's something that becomes public. So what happens is, if you go to NIAS website, you can see the list of schools that have had adverse action. It's a statement about the quality of offerings, the quality of the programming, the quality of, or the level of support in the community for that district's flagship school. During my 6 years, I saw on the commission for NIAS, I saw schools that, sometimes were placed on warning and it was a wake-up call, but then in other schools where, when there was ongoing problems with community support, it degraded to probation. And then there's some schools where, 3-4 years on probation and things are actually going in the opposite direction, that their accreditation is terminated.
You mentioned in a previous slide that there's a reduction in not in employees, but in education services, but also in Norfolk Aggie.
Yeah.
About $50,000.
Yeah.
Is that just attrition from Norfolk Aggie? Or
Now, what happens is, when we do that initial budget, we do not know definitively how many students are going to apply and then be accepted into Norfolk Aggie. So we do our best guess, and I believe the number that we budgeted for was, correct me if I'm wrong, 4 additional?
3 additional.
3 additional.
12 current
3 graduated, and but we had anticipated 3 plus another 3 potential of the 7 applicants.
And we ended up with only 1 additional. And realize, as a regional school district, we take on those tuitions.
Mhm.
Usually, if we were not a regional school district and we were just affiliated with the town would be paying us. But we subsume those tuitions.
Is that similar to the same process goes for BBT as well?
Yeah, except the BBT process, the towns pay those direct.
Right, okay. So does that mean that we will try to restrict the number of children going to Norfolk Aggie?
We don't have the ability.
We can't do that.
Right.
So basically, we had 12 kids there, 3 graduated, so now we're down to 9. They've already accepted 3 more. So now we're back to 12. There's still a waiting list that they'll let us know maybe in August before school starts if they take any more. We potentially, so we have 1 more slot that we budgeted for, but we reduced the other 2 that we had budgeted for.
So we're completely beholden to whatever parents decide to do with their children for.
Well, we already know who's applied. They had to apply by April 1st. So we already know the number of applications. I've been told they don't think they're going to accept anybody else, but there is the wait list and they could always bring somebody else on. So we're taking a little bit of a risk in that we budgeted for 1 potential additional student. If they take 2, we've got to come up with another $25,000.
So it's challenging, and we've had in previous summers, we've kind of done battle and we've gone to DESE over it and so on, where we've literally had these 11th hour situations where on August 15th, they're notifying us that, yeah, we're taking another kid from Mendon or we're taking another kid from Upton, which, you see the price of the tuition, it adds up. And, I know, Phil, you were definitely on the committee back then, but I've given presentations on just the growth of Norfolk Aggie. I'm sure, yeah, you were also on the committee back then. It's been significant, and realize to your earlier question, it's a problem that's directly connected to BBT, because we have some kids that opt for Norfolk Aggie because they didn't get into BBT. I don't think, riding a bus for an hour plus to Walpole back and forth every day is the easiest road to hoe, so to speak. But we've got kids that do it, and God bless them. And I think Norfolk Aggie does a wonderful job, but it's a really challenging financial piece for this district to take on.
I mean, funding component for a student going to Norfolk Aggie versus staying within the district is literally twice what it is for that student in the district. So. Well, let's hope the vote passes. I mean, there's work to be done, but at the same point, I think it's important to understand, for people to understand, the cuts are real.
Yeah.
I mean, these aren't cuts that, we're gonna all of a sudden magically find something about. These are cuts that are real, and they impact programs like we've said before and stated before, so.
I mean, this exists as your plan for how we're gonna meet the costs. This is not some fantasy we made up.
I've spent over the last 2 weeks sitting down with people, giving them pink slips. It's not pleasant. You do your best to explain and process and so on, but it's very real.
It's unfortunate too, because with the vote not coming in until June 29th, at the end of the month, the people that got pink slips very well are probably gonna have other jobs by June 29th.
And I think I said this during our last meeting, it's very much a buyer's market for
Very
teachers, okay? I would not be shocked. Folks like reading specialists are not,
Speech therapists.
my daughter's one, I know.
You can't find them.
You cannot find these people.
These people are
And,
screwed up.
I know, I've already written a couple of letters of recommendation. I know of a couple really, really high quality people who are already now finalists for positions in neighboring districts. So it is really, really unfortunate, but we will lose some very talented people from this district.
Well, I think some of the other part that's scary for me is with a lot of these cuts in our special education services, these are cuts that could potentially cost the district money in the long run too, if we're no longer able to meet the needs of our special education population.
I agree.
So I think that's something that your typical voter may not really be aware of, that then we'll have to be assuming out of district costs for these students. Okay, so Mendon, please vote, June 29th. Any other discussion? Okay, then the next item on our agenda is correspondence.
Just one simple correspondence, and it is from the aforementioned Lee Martin, and it is just a thank you card. And she goes on to say, I'm deeply grateful to everyone I've had the pleasure of serving with. Being committed and working together for the betterment of our students and their families has been a true privilege. I wish all of you great success in the challenges that lie ahead. Lee.
Okay, and next up is community comments. I know there's something I'm supposed to say about participation online at this point.
It's to be live.
So somebody live. Hi.
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 Shelley Cook, Merck president, as well as Upton person. Would it be possible to get a copy of that presentation? Because some of the information we don't have yet. And also, is there going to be a handbook subcommittee? And do you know if parents as well as educators will be on that subcommittee?
Like a student handbook? That's something that's handled at the building level.
Not school committee?
No.
My understanding is that it's normally gathered by, the principals at each individual school. And it's normally made up of teachers and parents alike. I don't know if they go through PTO or they reach out, but I know that they have parents on that.
You know, my daughter was part of the handbook committee at the middle school, so I know it exists. And then, is there anybody present on the Zoom call with community comment?
I don't see any raised hands.
Okay. All right, then moving on to other matters not anticipated by the committee within 48 hours of the posted meeting.
I agree.
Okay. And hearing none, we'll move on to future agenda items, which would include the 2020-21 MURSD Golden Apple Awards for June 21st, and an update from Senator Spatman and more also on June 21st. And at this point, we'll roll call to executive session pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A, exemption number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to negotiations with the Regional Teachers Association, because doing so in open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. The committee will not return to open session. A motion to adjourn?
Oh, well, it's the roll call.
Or the
That
roll
was
call?
the motion.
Yeah, that was the motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Second.
Eric Brown, aye.
Gary Lawrence, aye.
Bill Desotter, aye.
Sean Nichols, aye.
Rosie Scalia.
And the motion is approved. And the meeting is officially